Hi everyone, my name is Keith Brooks and this is Brooks Channel, and for today's video we're going to continue reading the first draft of my Outcasts novel. This time we're going to be covering Chapter 7, which will be the start of the second official arc of the series. The previous chapter that we covered in the last video, Chapter 6, was the end of the first official arc, and covers how the first four main protagonists, Joey, Mitch, Jay, and Woody, end up leaving home to start their adventures together. This chapter will introduce the fifth of the main protagonists. And what starts their adventures. So, without further ado, let's open it up, start reading, and I'll introduce you. Our story goes back 2 weeks earlier, to a different part of the United Regions, the Eastern Region, the largest of the four. Comparing it to our world, the East region would mostly resemble Eastern countries, such as China or Japan. The majority of towns and cities in this region are mostly set in their traditional standards and customs, with rare occasions of change. This is the homeland of our fifth outcast. We begin at the Dawn Family Martial Arts Academy, a long-standing school run by the Dawn family since its opening 10 generations ago. Apart from regular learning, they mainly teach various fighting styles from around the world. Its alumni have gone on to be some of the greatest warriors in the Eastern region. Hang on. Sorry, I miswrote a word here. In one of the locker rooms of this prestigious academy, one of the students was preparing for a sparring match with one of their classmates. She was a young girl, around 14 years old, and in the late end of her first year at the school. Looking at herself in the locker room's wall mirrors, she was dressed in her blue and white sparring uniform, making sure she was completely covered. She flexed her arm, which like the rest of her body was finely toned from years of training. She then tied her shoulder-length light blonde hair into a ponytail to ensure none would get in her face. Finally, she looked directly at her face in the mirror, light green eyes staring back at her before turning to leave. The girl entered her sparring class, her opponent already on his side of the ring. She walked over to the other side and started stretching. Their instructor stood between them, taking a step back before speaking. "Are both fighters ready?" he asked, looking at his students. Both nodded to confirm. "All right," the instructor said before raising his arm up. "Begin!" he shouted, starting the match. The boy rushed over to the girl and threw a punch at her. She quickly dodged to the side and prepared to block 3 more. After 1 more, she parried his fist and hit him in the face with a light jab. He yelped in pain before jumping back. He then looked at the girl in irritation before moving toward her again. It went on like this for another 3 minutes. The boy would attempt to punch the girl, who either blocked or dodged, each one until finding an opening to hit him back. Each of the girl's punches were light but fast, and it was starting to take a toll on the boy. He could feel the pain building up on his nose and jaw, where she kept hitting him. Having had enough, the boy ran at her while screaming at the top of his lungs, and his fist raised up to punch her. The girl reacted quickly and ducked under the boy's fist just before it could hit her. The boy turned around fast and threw another punch at the girl. She moved her head to avoid the blow and punched him in the jaw, stunning him for a brief moment. The girl then punched him 3 more times around his nose and eyes, before delivering a hard kick to the side of his head, knocking him to the floor with a thud. The instructor ran up to the boy to check on him. He was still conscious, but only able to lay there groaning in pain. The instructor helped him up and braced him as he regained balance. "This match is over," he said. "The winner is Beth." She just stood there as the instructor declared her the winner, a small smile forming on her face as the feeling of victory came onto her. This girl is Beth Sawyer, a first-year student at the Dawn Family Martial Arts Academy. On this day, a chain of events would lead her to start her own journey that would soon intertwine with the 5 others that, like her, were branded outcasts by those around them. Beth stood there for a moment longer, her happiness at winning the match clear on her face. What she didn't notice was the looks on her classmates' faces. Some had a look of contempt, while others one of pettiness. Beth snapped out of her thoughts and walked over to her opponent and the instructor. "Good work today, Beth," the instructor said to her. "Thanks," she replied before looking at the boy. "Good match," she said to him while offering her hand. The boy just went, and swatted her hand away before walking away. As Beth stood there watching him leave, she could hear others in the class talking about her. Did you see how smug she looked at the end? I know, like it was so easy for her. What do you expect from the head's favorite? Beth just listened to it all, just the same as every time before. Later on, in the academy's cafeteria, lunchtime had begun. Everyone was grabbing their meals and sitting down with their friends. Meanwhile, Beth was sitting at an old table in the corner of the room, her only company walking up to join her, with his lunch tray in hand. "Hey," Beth said, greeting the boy as he sat down next to her. This boy's name was Mark Jones, a first-year student like Beth, but in mostly different classes. While Beth was primarily in combat and self-defense classes, Mark was mainly in general studies. Although Mark had extensive knowledge of multiple fighting styles from reading so many books on the subject, he lacked the skill to use most of it in the way Beth could. In terms of appearance, Mark was rather plain-looking. He had an average-looking face that didn't stand out much. His hair was black and a little messy, while his eyes were brown and hidden behind a pair of round glasses. He was dressed in the Academy's standard uniform, which hid the modest muscles he'd built from training. Overall, most people in school never paid him much attention. "Hey," Mark replied to Beth as he sat down next to her. "So how did practice go?" he asked curiously. I won again," Beth told him, trying to avoid how class ended. "How about you?" Mark just stayed silent with his head hung down. "Oh, sorry I asked," Beth said, understanding the message. "Don't worry about it," Mark replied. "I'm used to it. So did anyone give you a hard time today?" Beth just looked down while gripping her drink cup in anger. "It's like that every time," Beth started letting it out. "Every time I win a match, they give me the same crap. They all keep calling me the head's favorite, just because he trained me before I started school. Like that's my fault," she yelled angrily while blindly picking up a biscuit and taking a bite out of it. Mark just looked at her blankly for a moment before pointing out that it was his biscuit in her hand. That was mine," he said to her. Beth looked down at her tray to see her own untouched biscuit still there, while the spot where Mark should be was empty. "Ah!" Beth shouted before quickly putting her own biscuit on Mark's tray. "I'm sorry." "It's nothing," Mark said to her. "And don't let all of this bother you so much. Even if you got early training from the headmaster, you still have to work hard through it all. Besides, even without his training, you'd still be doing better than me." Mark hung his head as he said this. Beth looked at Mark, feeling almost as down as him. He was the one student in the academy willing to be her friend, the only one that never judged her. She hated seeing him like this, but didn't know what she could do to help. "That's not true," Beth said, trying to think of what to say. "Maybe we—" Before she could say anything else, Beth was cut off by a loud scream. Her and Mark both turned to see who it came from. It was the boy Beth fought earlier that day. He was face down on the floor, groaning in pain. The one responsible was someone Beth and Mark knew all too well. His name was Din Chiao Hao, a third-year student with the worst reputation of them all. He was incredibly strong and skilled enough to rival some of the instructors. However, he also had a very short fuse and a bad temper. He would never hesitate to beat or intimidate anyone he felt like, and hated anyone who remotely tried to challenge him. The boy rolled to his side to look up at Chiao Hao, still groaning in pain from the fall. "Ugh! What the hell was that for?" he asked, anger mixed with the pain. Chiyohao looked down at him in disgust. "I heard about your match earlier," Chiyohao said to the boy. "You seriously lost to a bitch?" He then angrily kicked the boy in the stomach, making him yell out in pain again. "You call yourself a warrior?" he yelled, kicking him again. Beth and Mark looked in horror at the assault, both having different ideas on how to handle the situation. "We should get a teacher," Mark said, hurrying to get up. He quickly turned to look at Beth, only to see her walking over to Chiyohao. "Oh no," was all he could think to say. As Chiyohao was about to kick the boy again, Beth shoved her way in between them. Chiyohao stumbled back a couple of steps, caught off guard by the unexpected interruption. He looked over to see Beth between him and his victim. "You," he growled at Beth, his face turning even more angry. Beth looked Chiyohao in the eye, with her fist raised. "Leave him alone," she yelled at him. Mark stood, knowing nothing he could do or say would convince Beth to back out of this. Instead, he resumed his original plan to get a teacher. "This is none of your business. Back off!" Chiyohao yelled at Beth. "What are you attacking him for?" Beth asked demandingly. Chiyohao turned his gaze back to the boy, who was now sitting up, looking back at him in fear. "He needs to be taught a lesson." "What are you talking about?" Beth asked, unsure of what he meant. "And how is this teaching anyone anything?" Chiyohao looked back at Beth, with a serious look on his face. "This is the only fitting punishment for trash like him," he said. "It's what he gets for losing to a bitch." Beth's face tensed in anger at hearing this. "What did you say?" she asked furiously. Chiyohao had a cocky grin forming on his face, seeing Beth snap at him. "You heard me," Chiyohao said, with a smug tone in his voice. "There's no way a guy should lose to a little girl like you. Unless," he said, looking at the boy on the ground, "he threw the match." Beth and the boy both looked at Chiyohao in disbelief at what he said. "After all, we are talking about the headmaster's pet," Chiyohao continued. "Maybe today's loser was asked to throw the match for better grades or something like that." He then walked up to Beth and looked down at her. "All for his little charity case." Beth lost all of her composure at hearing this. Without a single thought, she threw a punch at Chiyohao's face, only for him to hold up his hand to block it, effortlessly. "Too easy," he said, before punching Beth back, hitting her right in the face hard enough to make her stagger a few steps back. Beth quickly shook out of her dazed state before looking over at Chiyohao, his smug smile still present as he looked to be chuckling a little, watching her. Consumed by anger and annoyance, she ran towards him to try to punch him again. This time, he grabbed her arm and tossed her at a table. Beth's back hit the table hard before she fell face first to the floor. She groaned out in pain as she looked up at Chiyohao. He had his back turned to her, with both his arms raised to his sides, certain that Beth would stay down. "You see now?" Chiyohao asked the crowd of students watching him. "This little bitch is nothing." Just a little before he could finish, Beth snuck up behind him and swept his leg, making him fall with a shocked yell. Beth stood behind Chiyohao with a satisfied smile on her face. "Now that cocky butthole will take me seriously," Beth thought to herself. She then watched as Chiyohao slowly got back up and turned to face her. It was then Beth's smile faded as she stood frozen in fear. Chiyohao stood there looking directly at Beth, his face contorting into a look of complete rage. His body started emitting a red aura as his fist balled up tightly. The only thing he would say is, "You..." Hang on. Sorry, my words got a little messed up. "You worthless trash." Before anything else could happen, one of the instructors ran up and stood between Beth and the two students. "Both of you, break it up! Now!" he shouted at them. Chiyohao looked at him for a moment before the aura around him faded away. Beth calmed down and looked over to see Mark hiding behind the cafeteria entrance, clearly hoping Chiyohao wouldn't see him. "Both of you, come with me," the instructor said to Beth and Chiao Hao. "You're going to explain this to the headmaster." Beth and Chiao Hao both remained silent as they followed the instructor. On the way, they briefly glanced at each other, Chiao Hao giving a look of anger, while Beth's was more uneasy. Alright, and that's the 7th chapter. Yeah, sorry I kind of got a little screwed up in some of the ways I was talking. I may have written some of the words when it was kind of hard to make out. But yeah, that's the 7th chapter. That introduces us to Beth, our 5th protagonist, at the school that she studies at, both for, like, life in general and learning how to fight. Yeah. Also, her friend Mark, who I'm planning to give his own stories here and there once in a while, and Chiao Hao, which is basically the school bully. And for any Chinese speakers, sorry if I mispronounce his name. Yeah. And next chapter, we'll meet the headmaster and Beth's main teacher, along with a little backstory of how they met. And yeah, that about covers it. I'll probably cover chapter 8 next week. And I'll be working on chapter 10 soon at the time of making this video. And despite my awkwardness of reading this, I hope you enjoyed listening. And namaste say, so I'm just gonna end the video here. And as always, please let me know your thoughts about this war in the comments. And with that, I will see you all in the next video. Bye.